Hey guys, welcome to Whiskey and Literature, where we read and discuss the greatest books of all time. And while we're turning those pages, we're sipping those bottles, those finely distilled spirits. I'm your host, Captain Mike, and I'm reading and reviewing 52 books in 52 weeks in 2023. This is my 20th review of the year, Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. And before we get to the book, let's talk about the author. Ralph Ellison. He was born in 1914, died in 1994. He's an American author, scholar, and critic. He went to the Tuskegee Institute, where he left before he graduated. And he received the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 1969. Okay, that was super brief about Ralph Ellison. Let's talk about the specs and stats of the book. This was Invisible Man was Ralph Ellison's first book and the only book published in his lifetime. It was published in 1952 and took him 5 years to write. My copy of Invisible Man is 572 pages long, and I didn't listen to it at all on Audible. Invisible Man has been described as a race novel, a Bildungsroman, and even a picaresque. And it has been described as Kafkaesque. I understand what Kafkaesque means now because I just finished The Trial by Franz Kafka. It just means that the character or characters in the story are consistently put in absurd situations. Okay, so let's talk about the plot of Invisible Man. And we start in the present in the prologue with the words, "I am an invisible man." And then with chapter 1, we kick back to the past where the narrator has just graduated high school. He wins a scholarship to an all-black college, but in order to receive it, he has to participate in an humiliating battle royale with a bunch of young black men for the amusement of the town's white men. And this battle royale, this whole scene, this first chapter really sets a tone for the rest of the novel. And it's not wrong to consider that chapter specifically the most Kafkaesque of the entire book. So during his junior year in college, he drives around a rich white trustee of the college around campus, and then he asks him to take him off of campus. So he drives around through the different parts of the countryside, and they end up by the cabin of a man named Jim Trueblood, who had impregnated his wife and his daughter. Trueblood very explicitly describes to Mr. Norton, the white trustee, how he came to impregnate his daughter in a dream. And this disturbed the trustees so badly, they left, and he asked the narrator, "Please, I need some whiskey. Go take me to get some whiskey right now." So the narrator drives him to the only place he knows where he can get whiskey, which is a local bar filled with prostitutes and some crazy patients of a local mental hospital. And here we have the second most crazy Kafkaesque scene in the whole book. And finally, the narrator gets Mr. Norton out of this situation and back to the campus. The president of the college, a black man, is so infuriated that the narrator took Mr. Norton off campus and into these parts of the black community that he expels him from the college and sends him to New York City. But he gives him some sealed letters of recommendation to give to some of his friends so that he can get a job and make his way in the world. Or at least that's what the college president told the narrator. But the sealed letters were in fact not a recommendation, but a warning to his friends to not hire the narrator, and explicitly telling his friends that the narrator will never ever get back into college. The narrator, of course, doesn't know this, and he distributes all the letters to these heads of businesses throughout New York City. And then one of the president's sons gets the letter instead, opens it, and allows the narrator to read it. So the narrator realizes he's not going to get any help from the college president's friends and gets a job at Liberty Paint Factory. He gets assigned to the boiler room, and the supervisor down there thinks that the narrator is there to try and take his job and tricks him into exploding a boiler. The narrator then is hospitalized because the boiler blew up and he was burned and badly injured. And while he's in the hospital, he's subjected to shock treatment. After leaving the hospital, he's so weak he faints. He meets Mary Rambo, who is a kindly old lady, and he boards with her. Walking one night through the neighborhood, he comes across the eviction of an old black couple, and he incites the crowd to attack the officers who are performing the eviction. In the riot that ensues, the narrator narrowly escapes and meets Brother Jack. He's one of the leaders in a group that professes to be working towards the betterment of the black community in Harlem and their city. So the narrator joins the Brotherhood, and the rest of the story concerns the narrator's time in the Brotherhood. He is indoctrinated, seduced, sent away, recalled, criticized, chased, has his identity mistaken, attacked, and sealed. And that, in a short nutshell, is the plot of Invisible Man. And the only characters I'm going to talk about in the novel are the narrator and Mary Rambo, the unnamed narrator, nameless young black man. Not only is he never named in the story, but he's given a new name by the Brotherhood, a name that we never learn. And still another name, Reinhardt, he's given. But that's a case of mistaken identity, which he uses to his advantage. And really that's a part of being invisible. No name, no identity of his own, just adopting the roles circumstance places on him. And then we have Mary Rambo, the only other character in the entire novel that to me seemed realistic. She lets out the rooms in her house, including one to the narrator, and she's the kind of person you would want to be your friend. All the other characters in the book, to me, were just stereotypical caricatures, and they're so crazy, I think any one of them would fit very nicely in a Kafka novel. Okay, let's talk about the style of Invisible Man. I feel like this book is what The Trial by Franz Kafka. And I know I keep talking about this book in relation to Invisible Man, but I just finished it recently, like 10 days ago, so it's fresh in my mind, and this book has been compared to it. But this book is what The Trial by Franz Kafka could have been had he finished it. We have this same kind of absurd situations that the narrator tries to make better, but continually through his actions just makes worse and worse throughout the entire novel. And the book starts out rapid fire, staccato almost, scene after crazy scene, slightly difficult to follow. And then after he gets to New York, there's longer and longer scenes, but still fairly difficult for me to understand what was going on. Honestly, I had difficulties following the action sometimes, especially in regards to the leadership of the Brotherhood. It moved along so fast and in such a choppy fashion, I oftentimes didn't even know who was speaking. I didn't know why they were doing what they were doing. I think Invisible Man is definitely a more coherent novel than The Trial, simply because we know that it's in order and it was finished. Okay, so having said all that, what are my thoughts on Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison? And to be honest with you, this book did not move me at all. I felt almost no emotion while reading this book. It reminded me of Middlemarch by George Eliot. I just read the book, I turned the pages, I wasn't excited or sad or happy or glad or anything. I just read the book and then it was over. And it didn't help that occasionally I was confused by what was happening, which made me lose some interest and even perhaps be bored. I didn't feel invested in any of the characters. I couldn't relate with the narrator, and I felt like Mary Rambo was the only truly fleshed out character, someone that I liked. I struggled to find anything bad about the novel, but at the same time, I can't think of anything to praise or recommend. This might be the most neutral book that I've read this entire year so far, or maybe I should say the most invisible book. Okay guys, time for the star rating, and I judge all my books on 5 criteria, 6 if I listen to it on Audible, and I didn't listen to this book at all on Audible. So let's go through what my thoughts were on the star rating. First of all, initial response. How did I feel as soon as I finished the book? And I put a 3. I was neither excited or unexcited, I just read it and it was done. Recommendation. How likely am I to recommend this book? I'm going to give that a 2. I'm not really going to recommend it to anyone to read. Style, did I enjoy the writing style? I kind of like how it moved along, it was fast and it was great, but that kind of, well, I'm going to give it a 3. Plot and structure, how engaged was I in the story? 2. 2. I wasn't really engaged. I was confused most of the time. Number 5, characters. Were they relatable, believable, and engaging? And it also gets a 2 because most of the characters were caricatures. I just didn't, I wasn't invested, didn't care, unfortunately. Okay, so that's 12. And 12 divided by 5 is 2.4. So 2.4 stars for Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison. Okay guys, thanks for sticking with me. If you enjoy the video, like it, it's free. I do book and whiskey reviews, and the links to those are in the description. Subscribe if you want to see more. Guys, I hope you are reading something good and drinking something great. Turn the pages, my friends, and stay thirsty. Cheers.